And then in 2019, I transitioned into a disability awareness educator because I really was passionate about bringing awareness to society about disabilities.
Please welcome Diverse Abilities founder, Gina Martin.
The words you choose can lift people up or you can knock them down. And so if you're ever unsure, just ask the individual. We would much rather you ask us what we prefer than just assume and call us whatever.
An advocate for inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and language.
If you need a cane, use it. It will make your life so much easier.
Without further ado, here's Gina Martin. We hope you enjoy.
When I was younger, we were taught not to look or stare or ask questions for people with disabilities. And I think that by creating the dialogue, it just helps people to better understand that we're people too. We just do things different.
Welcome to Blind Abilities. I'm Jeff Thompson. Today in the studio, we got Gina Martin, and she is someone who has quite a journey that spells out exactly why she started her company, Diverse Abilities. Gina Martin, welcome to Blind Abilities.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for welcoming me. This is really exciting to be able to share my journey. It wasn't so exciting when I was younger and started losing my vision. I was diagnosed in 1992 with Progressive Cone Dystrophy. In both eyes, I was diagnosed legally blind. And so I wandered around the sighted world pretending I was sighted because I did not want to identify as somebody experiencing vision loss. There was no way I was using a cane. I was not going to draw attention to myself. I did not want people staring at me or accusing me of faking it because I had some sight. I myself, the cane was definitely not an option for me. I didn't also connect with people in the community who had vision loss or who were blind. I didn't feel I needed it, or maybe I didn't want it. I'm not quite sure, but it did take me 24 years to accept that vision loss is my journey.
Gina, not accepting your blindness is such a common story, but what changed? Where did you pivot? What happened to make you change all that?
So it was in 2015 when I met two women who were confident and blind, and it absolutely blew my mind. I'm like, how are you doing this? Like, wow. And Elizabeth had the Pacific Training Center here in Victoria, which was a one-off of LCB, the Louisiana Center for the Blind. And it was 2 days a week here. And I just didn't feel like I was gaining the skills in a timely enough manner. So I decided to head to Louisiana and do the training that Danielle and Elizabeth had done. And wow, my life changed. It did a complete 180. So wearing the shades and learning how to navigate life with no sight at all completely built my confidence.
That's a 9-month adjustment to blindness training center in Louisiana.
Yeah, you wear a blindfold for 9 months and you're taught by instructors who are blind. At that point, I started to say, I'm not losing my sight anymore. I'm gaining my blindness. Because as I gained the skills and learned how to do things that people are blind do, I started to live life again. I just was living it different than I did when I had sight. That was super inspiring.
When you got back to Victoria, did people notice a difference?
Oh, 100%. I was no longer Gina who looked down at the floor for every step I took so that I didn't walk into things. I now looked up to the sky with the sun on my face and my cane led the way. And I had confidence. I was no longer that person struggling with sight loss. I was now a woman embracing my blindness. It really propelled me into changing careers. I was a waitress for 28 years and waitressing was great because it taught me how to communicate with people in random conversations. And then in 2019, I transitioned into a disability awareness educator because I really was passionate about bringing awareness to society about disabilities. Often people are uncomfortable. They don't know what to say. They don't know what to do. They don't want to offend, or they don't want to look ridiculous that they don't know how to interact. By bringing just the basic, simple tips to educate society is what's breaking down the barriers. Because when people know what to say and do and how to interact, then it takes all that guesswork out. And therefore, then our differences are just going to become that differences. As I moved forward with learning about different disabilities, it propelled me into starting my own business.
And that's Diverse Abilities.
Yes, Diverse Abilities programs. Welcome, everybody. I'm Gina Martin with Diverse Abilities Programs and Training. This is an introductory to understanding diversity. We spend a lot of time teaching people with disabilities how to fit in with society, but when society doesn't know how to interact with people who are blind or people who are deaf or people who have non-apparent disabilities, we're not going to create that inclusion that we talk so much about. And I tailor my programs to meet the needs of my audience and the goals of my clients.
Oh, that's great, because everyone's situation is so different.
Yes. Everybody needs different information for different situations. I have a youth program. I go into classrooms. I bring hands-on activities so that kids can gain an experience about what people living with disabilities go through. And by having this experience, they gain a better understanding. And they start to think outside the box as to, how can we include people? What can we do to make things easier? 1 out of 10 of us are born with a disability. 9 out of 10 of us are going to die with one. And it's just bringing that awareness to break through the barriers and create a more inclusive classroom for these kids, because everyone deserves to have their very best learning opportunity, but not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody can do things the same way. And so when we understand our differences, that's what it becomes, is just differences.
Tell me about a program that you have. It's called ADAPT, and it's spelled with a small a, then DAPT Youth and ADAPT Training as well.
Yeah, I have a few different ADAPT programs. I've been revamping my business. So I have my Youth ADAPT program, which is in the schools. I have my Seniors ADAPT program, because as we age, our abilities are going to change. It's just a natural process of life. And all of us will need some accommodations or some assistance of some type. And so for my seniors, I go into retirement communities. I bring all the tools and devices, a suitcase full of things that can make life easier. Because as we age and our abilities change, we don't always know what's out there. We don't always know what the tools are called or where to get them. And so when we can find things that make our life easier and learn new techniques on accomplishing tasks, we can enjoy more of life. We can, not struggle as much. And if I can help some seniors live their best lives by sharing helpful information on how to interact and communicate with people with disabilities, as well as how to live your best life with disabilities. And then I have my community ADAPT one as well, where I go into community centers, rec centers, and just teach the best practices for communicating, interacting, and assisting people who navigate life different.
How does it feel today to think back from 1992 to 2015, what you know now and what your experiences are today? What would you say to that person before 2015?
Oh, I would say get connected with people in the community who are going through what you're going through. You're going to learn so much from people's lived experience, new ways of navigating life and doing things. Yeah, really getting connected. I wish I had taken that opportunity when I was younger and not been so concerned about what other people think, and more concerned about what is going to make my life easier and allow me to live my best life to all of my potential. But I didn't know that younger, and I know it now. And that's what I would say to anybody who's new to vision loss or who hasn't had the experience of being connected. I would encourage those two things. Live your best life, do what is best for you, and get connected.
Yeah, when I first had vision loss, I asked my counselor, I said, where do they keep the blind? I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea. And so what you don't know, you don't know. And I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, because you're bringing them awareness to the possibilities. And I think that's everything that trainers and teachers want to do, is show them that there is more in you than you probably believe, because other people around you, support people, may have been keeping you down. And now that you open up these doors for them, the opportunities, show them that you can do it, and you're now a role model to them, that must be a great feeling. What kind of feedback have you gotten from people who have attended your programs?
Oh, I get so much great feedback. What I really love doing, to be honest, is educating society, because we've spent so much time teaching people with disabilities how to, quote, fit in to society. But when society doesn't know how to interact or assist somebody who's blind, communicate with somebody who's deaf or have speech disabilities, or understand accessibility for people with mobility disabilities, we'll never have the inclusion that we talk about.
Ideal team building. So IDEAL stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, and language. And we believe that when society and everyone around has the fundamental understanding of these concepts, is when we will break down the barriers that prevent people from participating fully in life.
And so by educating society as the do's and the don'ts and what's respectful and helpful and promotes dignity is going to break down those barriers, which is going to create more inclusive workspaces for hiring and for serving. Because when we know what to do and we know what to say, it takes that guesswork out, which is something that I really am passionate about.
Typically, a parent is going to be the first advocate that the child has as they're growing up, but other people have others. What advice do you have to people, support people around them? What would you say to them in the situation where someone has a disability?
How to support them? Ask the individual. No two people are the same. We don't have the same support systems at home, at school, in the community. We don't all have the financial abilities to purchase tools and devices that make life easier. We don't all have the opportunity to go to training or have rehab. Some people live in remote areas, and everybody's on a different acceptance journey. Ask the individual, and I really encourage individuals to speak up about what they need from people. Because if people don't know, they don't know. So one of the big things I say is, often people are quiet around those of us who have vision loss, and because they maybe don't know what to say or do. But I say envision a really foggy day when you can see the outline or shadows of a person, but you can't see their intentions. Being quiet is not helpful and it can be unsettling. So when you say hello, a few really awesome things happen. For one, you let me know that you're there. So if I needed help or a question asked, I would ask you. By just saying hello, you didn't insinuate I needed help by asking. So you treated me like everybody else, just saying hello. Your hello, again, let me know you're there. So when I'm swinging my cane, I don't trip you. And for those of us who have vision loss, we do not see those smiles, those nods, those friendly gestures that sighted people give each other all the time. So when you use your voice and you say hello, we take it as that smile, that nod, that friendly gesture. And I say, are you going to get an unfriendly response? Absolutely you will sometimes. Do you get an unfriendly response from somebody you say hello to on the street as you pass? You don't know that person who's using the cane, they may be new to vision loss. They may be new to using a cane and really concentrating, and we don't know what's going on for anybody. So by just saying hello, you treated us like everybody else, and that's all we want. Just to be included. So that's one of the things I really like to share with people. And if you know my name, use it. Say, hi, Gina, because then I know you're talking to me. I don't always know people are talking to me because I visually can't see them again. So using my name, if you know it, if somebody comes into your coffee shop often and they're using a cane or they have a guide dog, get to know their name and say hello. If you said, hi, Gina, it's Jeff, then I know who I'm talking to because I can't always identify people by voice alone. These are a few little tips that I like to share with society because they're really helpful for the majority of us who are experiencing vision loss and blindness. Yeah, these are just a few of the tips I like to share.
I grew up in an area here in Minneapolis where we had vision loss resource. We had Blind Incorporated, and up in Duluth, we have the Lighthouse up there. So certain areas or communities, like when someone's going to an adjustment to blindness training, they might be in a community that people are used to seeing blind people, visually impaired people with canes or dogs. So they become accustomed to it. But a lot of times, once you leave the training centers, you're going back to an area that there might be that token blind person down the road or that they know about, or there might be a sign, blind person on the street or something of that nature, or deaf or something. But when we go back to our communities, that's when the education starts, because if you don't start to be an ambassador for the blind, it's going to be a lonely time. And I think what you're doing is bringing that awareness to the communities, to the schools, to businesses, is opening the possibilities of inclusion and everything else, because then people have a clue of what it is. I had no clue when I went blind. Where do they keep the blind? I had no idea they were amongst us.
Well, I had no idea that there were so many tools and devices out there that can make our life easier. I didn't know that.
What's your go-to tool?
My go-to tool is my iPad for a lot of things. It really does. I have a less than 10% peripheral vision, but I'll go through my camera to zoom in on things and video things so I can look at it later on a large monitor. The apps that allow me just to be more independent. So my iPad is really my go-to friend. I learned all of the techniques and little tricks in the kitchen, so it's all set up really easy for me. I don't even really think about it.
That's the thing. Once you gain the skills and confidence, you don't think about it. You're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main thing. Some people ask, how do I do something? But when you get the training, get the experience, you start to do. And you've done a great job of doing and sharing your journey, your experience with the community. So good for you on starting Diverse Abilities.
Yeah, I love it. And it is breaking down barriers. It really is, because people are like saying hello now more often. In Canada, it's very different than the United States. Our government sponsors an organization that does our training. We have no full-time training here that I know of. Down in the States, there's so many different training centers that you have the option to choose from, which is amazing. We definitely don't have that. Learning about what you have down there is super inspiring, and I'd love to be able to continue to advocate for at least one training center in Canada that we could go to full time to get the experience that I was able to get in Louisiana.
Oh man, in 2015, what if you never would have met those two ladies that got you to pivot and think about the opportunities that you could have, the life-changing idea that you could go to LCB, go to Louisiana Center for the Blind and get the training? How many more 24 years would have gone by?
I would still probably be exactly the same place I was. I wouldn't have a job because that restaurant has closed down. I wouldn't have that confidence to advocate for myself. I wouldn't be going on adventures and traveling and doing all of the things I love doing. I would be a pretty much a homebody, I think, if I hadn't have met them.
Now you're opening doors for a lot of people.
Yeah, and enjoying life while I'm doing it and just showing people how I do it, just different from how they do it. That's all.
What advice do you have for someone who's 14 to 21 and they're in high school and they're thinking about college and the workplace? And what advice would you give someone that's just starting their journey?
Well, right away, I would say, learn Braille. It is such a useful tool. If you can, that's such a great tool to have. Learn what apps are going to be out there to help you. And if you need a cane, use it. It will make your life so much easier. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. If you are just willing to think outside the box and try it different than you did when you had sight, you'll be able to navigate it. Besides driving a car legally on the road, you can do pretty much everything.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the cane because I remember I was stubborn. I didn't want to use my cane. I'd fold it up, put it in my backpack. But if I went into a store and asked for, do you have this? They would just point and say, aisle 3, left side.
Yeah.
But if I had my cane out, they would say, hey, just a minute. And they go, it's right over this way. Yeah, okay. Do you want the blue, the red, or something like that? Because people are nice people. And if they were more aware of that I was hiding the cane, they didn't know I was visually impaired. The bus driver would say to me, after I asked him, what bus number is this? He says, it's on the front of the bus. And I would say, I'm visually impaired. And he said, how would I know? And so I started pulling my cane out more and more because it identified that I don't want to say it wasn't my identity. However, it alerted them. It gave them a little heads up on he might not be able to read or see this. And it just helps so much, so much.
Yeah, it really does. I remember, for so many years, I'm like, hey, could you please tell me what bus is coming? And they kind of look at you like, well, can't you do it? It's like, oh, I don't see well, I'm visually impaired. And so then I found, looking back now, every single person that I met, I was introducing myself as visually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And language is such a powerful tool. And in 2019, I stopped saying I'm visually impaired. It is the most common term used to describe vision loss. But what is the first thing you think of when you hear the word impaired? It tends to be negative. Not everybody feels that way. But when I stopped saying I'm visually impaired and started saying I have low vision, I'm partially sighted, I started to feel better about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And my interactions with people became kinder. From that experience and how it really changed my life when I was mindful of the words that I'm using when I'm describing myself to people all the time, or I'm talking about other people, our language can lift people up or knock them down unintentionally. And wow, just that change within myself of the language use. And then having the cane that identified to others, I wasn't having to introduce myself in a negative way. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it, but the word impaired comes across as negative to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a common word out there, and slowly, like the word that has faded away from our conversations is like handicap used to be used a lot of times, but that was so negative. I'm glad people are more aware of this, and that's basically what you're doing for your communities, your programs, is bringing awareness to how your interactions with someone with a disability can influence the conversation and the outcome.
Absolutely. Everybody's different, but if you don't know somebody and you're just talking about somebody in general or people in general, try to be mindful of the language. If you meet me and I say, you know what, I prefer visually impaired, then you know for me. But if you don't know, the words you choose can lift people up or you can knock them down. Mm-hmm. And so if you're ever unsure, just ask the individual. We would much rather you ask us what we prefer than just assume and call us whatever.
Gina, what are your future goals for Diverse Abilities programs?
Oh, my future goals, of course, is to bring awareness, to create more inclusion and accessibility. Eventually, phase 2, I will have my Easy Life store on my website where you'll be able to come and find all the tools and devices that make your life easier or your loved one's lives easier. It's just spread the word, bring awareness, make this not an uncomfortable topic. It doesn't need to be. There's just a few things that you can do that will take away all of that uncomfortableness. And I say the number one thing is just ask people first if they'd like some help. If they say no, don't get offended. I do get people, oh, I was just trying to help. And I'm like, but I didn't ask you for your help. You assumed I needed help. If they say yes, the second question needs to be, well, how would you like me to help you? Mm-hmm. And if you use, would you like help and how can I help with everybody, you've just created inclusion for everybody. And it's just 2 sentences.
If you put yourself out there in society, we're all a target for something. It's just natural. You're out there. And some people see us with the cane or a guide dog, and it's like, hark, I'm going to have a Boy Scout moment and do my good deed for the day. So they may do that. And if you don't have that happening, you're not out there enough, because it'll happen. And I would say 29 times out of 30, I look at it as an educational moment. And that one time I might not be in the mood I'm going from A to B, just like anybody else is out there. Take advantage of those opportunities sometimes, and you get a chance to educate someone.
Absolutely. I agree. Like, I myself don't need help crossing the street. I'm very confident, but anytime anybody asks me, I'm like, oh yeah, and let me take your elbow. The majority of us do it for these reasons. You're half a step in front of me. So if you step down or up on the curb, I can feel your body movement. We take your elbow. If we don't feel safe, we can easily disengage. I give them the reasons why a lot of us prefer to be guided this way. Of course, not everybody's the same, which is why it's important to ask. But I like to bring that little bit of an education through the little walk across the street. It just creates that awareness for them to always ask first.
Where can people find out more about Diverse Abilities?
My website is diverseabilities.ca. I also have a Facebook page, Diverse Abilities, where I share helpful tips, information on all different types of disabilities, on how to communicate, interact, and assist. Yeah, things that make life easier.
Hello, my name is Gina Martin, and I'm with Diverse Abilities. I'm here today to share some helpful tips that could make your life a little bit easier, or somebody that you know.
And a lot of it is directed at the general public so that they can learn about people with disabilities. And of course, my presentations, people book me and I go in, and I like to do in person because it's really personal. People can have an experience through activities that I provide.
And your blog on the website.
Yeah, I got lots of blogs on my website that I write. I share them on my social media as well. I've just recently joined a LinkedIn because my business is shifting a bit more to small businesses and, large corporation training for inclusion and accessibility for the hiring and serving process of businesses. I've just joined LinkedIn to try and start connecting with businesses.
Yeah, I saw you on Facebook there, and it was neat. These short little tips and stuff that are out there, really good stuff. And I got lost in your blogs because you're a very good writer, and you put it out there, and it's enjoyable read, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you. I love what I do, and it's very kind of you to say that. Thank you.
So Gina, thank you so much for coming on to Blind Abilities and sharing with us your journey and your entrepreneurship on starting Diverse Abilities and bringing to the people what you've experienced in your lifetime. And I think that's part of it. It's part of it. Your experience is the best teacher for others too. So I'm glad you're doing what you're doing.
Oh, thanks, Jeff. I love it. I love it very much. I think often when I was younger, we were taught not to look or stare or ask questions for people with disabilities. And I think that by creating the dialogue, it just helps people to better understand that we're people too. We just do things different.
Yep. We got to get out there.
Exactly.
Such a great time talking to Gina Martin. Be sure to check out her website and Facebook. That's diverseabilities.ca on the web and Diverse Abilities on Facebook. And you can find all the links in the show notes. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed. For more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at Blind Abilities, and download the free Blind Abilities app from the App Store and Google Play Store. That's 2 words, Blind Abilities. And if you want to leave some feedback, give us some suggestions, give us a call at 612-367-6093. We'd love to hear from you. I want to thank you for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
When we share
what we see through
each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the reality
of blind abilities.